Hello, everyone.
There's no hope in you for me.
We are running.
Squeeze me. I got all the time for you. The space between.
Hello. Gotta look for Mary to get on here. Hello. There she is. I see her. Hold on. Yes. I have to get used to this phone thing because I'm used to. Hey, Mary.
Hello.
Hello.
Yay.
Here we are. Yes. Bring it
So excited
on.
to be here. Awesome. I see so many great friends
I'm
here.
celebrating with my water ice.
Ooh, yes. Perfect. I've got my bottle of water, and I felt like in the spirit of things, I needed to bring back out a White Claw. I haven't had one of these in so long, and we used to have so many of them, of course, when we were doing Outlander cast in season. So I thought, when in Rome, I'll have a little seltzer.
All right, I'm going to fade out our music here. Stop that. All right. Now, just give me 1 second
Go for
because
it.
I need to, let's see, I need to bring it up on my thing.
Yeah.
Vamp. I can actually tell somebody to vamp.
Yes,
I love it.
got you. All right. So everybody who's joining in currently live, let us know where you're tuning in from. I'll try to give a little hi. Hi, Susan. Hey, Jane. Great to see you. Hi, Janice. Oh, so excited. Hi, Karen. And if, of course, you watch us in the replay, put a little hashtag replay. That way we
Yes,
can.
and if you are if this is your first time reading this story along with Mary, put what did I say to put? I think I put, let's see. Well, give me hearts if you've read it before, smiley faces if you are reading it for the first time.
Yay. Hi, Donna. I see you there. Hi, Phyllis and Catherine. And we have Ashley and Karen. So happy. Hi, Susan. Just got home. Hi, Gail. Yeah, so is this anyone's first time reading this story, or has everyone here read it? Who's watching live? Hi, Karen from Sweden. Thank you for tuning in. Connie has never read the entire story. Yay, Connie.
Yes.
Awesome.
Great.
Barb, so happy to see you here. Hi, Anna. So I think Barb and Amber, smiley faces if they haven't or have read it. I forgot. I was like half listening. Hi, Ellen. Hey, Sarah. Leanna says that this is her first time. Hi, Susan.
All right. I'm just trying to get, because I'm working on 2 screens here, so.
Catherine, first time reading. She hasn't read ahead. Yay! Awesome. Sarah. Stay with me, Catherine. Hey, Ellen, Carlotta, Janine.
All right. There we go. All right. So, okay. So I wanted to welcome everybody to our first novellas soiree Beehive. This is the Beehive. I'm Angela. And this is Mary, which all of you should know. This is Mary of the infamous Mary and Blake Media. And they also coordinate Outlander cast, which when we are in season is a very happening place.
Yes.
And they do an excellent podcast. Actually, they were my first group. They were my first fandom. They were my first everything back when they started season 1. And so I've kind of made this a little home. So I'm glad to have everybody here. I have some good news for everybody right off the bat. Mary and I have talked a little, and we are going to expand this novella time to 7 weeks total instead of 6. So we are going to do 5 weeks on the space between, just so we can pace it out a little more and be able to have time to really talk about things. Because, you know, those that you have read it before, you know there's a lot of doozy stuff in this one that like brings up more questions, you know, as you read it. So there's going to be things we want to discuss, and I just feel like to keep Mary like not on one of my 3-hour marathons. That's probably the best thing to do because she
Bless
is
your heart.
totally not up for that.
Yeah, Angela's like, do you want to do it? I was like, the only problem is that I can maybe trust my kids to be quiet for an hour and a half.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like an hour and a half is Mary's max, so I
Yes.
can't, to me, I'm just kind of getting the juices going.
I know. So those of you who are used
I'm
to longer bits,
unusual.
don't worry. But yeah,
I'm unusual.
but you
I'm
are
a
going to be doing
weirdo.
some post chat, right? After
Yes,
we have
yes.
these.
The after buzz, we're calling it. Kind of in the loop, like your after dark, without
Mm-hmm.
the Boston accent.
Yeah.
After buzz. And so I just want to just go over a couple things real quick before we move on. This is the Beehive. If you're new to just me in general, or the Beehive in general, this is the Beehive. We're kind of a subgroup under the Outlander Cast Book Club subgroup. And I'm kind of doing a bees prep read. So we started with the Lord John books, then we went into Echo. Now we're just now starting Moby. We just did week 1, like a prologue and 1 chapter. And then we're doing these novellas, which fall between Echo and Moby. So that's all kind of geared toward the bees release, which is coming November 23rd. Um,
So
yes,
excited.
yes, me too. And so we're getting I kind of run these with a mind to look forward to that. So I kind of, as we go, we kind of see how things might crop up, which there may be some things kind of evolving out of this story. So we kind of always are looking to the future as we discuss these, which is a little bit different than the norm probably. So also, one of the things that's important is you click going to the events. It doesn't mean you have to be here live if you click going, but it's important because if I have to change schedule, that's where it's going to be notified. If we have extras, which I post almost for everything that I do, I at least post 1 or 2, and that kind of gives you additional broader perspective on whatever we're reading that week. And they've really enhanced a lot of people's reading. So I hope that you guys will do that and take a look at the extras. Sometimes I allude to them when I'm talking here. So, definitely do that. Also, there is a Beehive Buzz thread that I change each Sunday. So make sure that you click, like a like on that so that you're getting alerted. That's kind of like a chat, friendship kind of vibe thread where we can kind of talk about anything and everything. Maybe something else triggered you while we had our live and you want to talk about it, or you hear news that, your Beehive friends would like. So it's kind of a way to kind of extend the community. These 2 novellas, they really give you, both of these are 2 of our favorites in the novellas, and they just kind of give you a full body, tingling, goosebumpy thrill ride, in very different ways. They're very different novellas, but they each uniquely have their thrill attached to them. I love them both. This one is the most supernatural, otherworldly, definitely you're a wizard Harry vibe to it, I definitely think you're going to like all the sorcerer vibes, Mary.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and the other one just gives you chills and brings tears to your eyes with the final twist of the book. So it's kind of like both of them have their own benefit, and I think you're going to really like them. But the space between is probably the most thought-provoking of the novellas, and very supernatural vibe to it. It's more supernatural than any of the other novellas.
And you get that right away that we're going to be talking about tonight. Like right away, I was like, oh, okay, yes.
And this is why I kind of, when we were doing season 2, I told Blake was just like, I'm over the comp, get ready. I'm just like, he's going to play a lot bigger and important role. Don't ever count anybody as non-important in the Gabaldon world,
Yep.
So,
yep.
So, and also our next Moby study is going to be Saturday, at 3:00. I do every other week a Saturday so that the people we have several bees, I call them, from Europe that come over. So I try to make a time that they can, because they're very plugged in. So I kind of alternate, those for you. Mary, is anything else you want to announce?
Oh, I'm just really, really excited to be here. This, of course, is my first time hanging out with you all here at the Beehive. And as Angela said, yes, my husband, Blake, and I, for those of you who don't know me, and, we are going to be sharing this content also on YouTube. So for
Which
those
I'm
of you who
thrilled
don't know
about.
me, yes,
So we can
find some
share
more
it.
friends. Yeah. We do. We have a podcast, particularly in season when Outlander is on TV. My husband is not a book reader, so this is a real treat for me to be able to hang out with fellow book readers and be able to be like,
Yes.
oh, I know these people, and I can't even talk about half of these people with my husband. So it's just, it's a nice breath of fresh air.
I was just telling them on the first movie chat, I said, Mary, like, how long has it been now that you've done Outlander cast? 7 years? 8 years?
8 years. Yeah, 7 or 8 years. Yeah.
And I said, when they first came on, it was billed like she was the book person, he was the show person, and all of this. But then he did his commandments where you're not allowed to mention the books. So it's like Mary's the book person, but never gets to talk book at all.
Yes. And on the flip side, like, I'm so thankful because of all these years, so many people have gotten to know Outlander thanks to, it just being on TV, and then it's been, released on Netflix, and then, God forbid, we've had this pandemic, but a lot of people have had time on their hands, so then they found it because they were binging Netflix, and one thing's led to another. So we have loads of new people who found the show, who've also been inspired to start the books. Exactly.
Yes.
So, Diana writes a lot, so people,
just in time
they
for
really just started.
I think she's going to have a bigger, like, sweeping first book sales on this book than any other because there's been so many new readers added,
Agreed.
So a little bit of groundwork. Oh, one thing else I want to just be crystal clear on, for the spoiler policy. Anyone, like I said, if you're reading this for the first time, as well as Mary's reading it for the first time, I want it to be fun for her. Normally, we don't worry about spoilers for anything, but for the novellas or the side books, we do try to keep that in place because, like, not to spoil what's coming up in this story, because some people, like, have read the big books, they haven't read the extras. And I want it to be, especially for Mary, I want her to kind of have the experience of, seeing things as they unfold. And she is being a good girl and staying on track of the reading each
90.
week.
Yes.
So, so she is going to just kind of experience it as we go. So, just be aware of that, please. You guys are usually very good about that kind of stuff. So, Donna says she ignores the commandments. I hear you.
Good for you, Donna.
I get commandment, shenanigans.
Do it for me, because I can't.
Exactly. We just roll our eyes, the book readers, when Blake starts. We go, okay, Blake. We love him, so that's why we put up with it. But, we go, okay, Blake.
He's like your little brother, you know what I mean? It's like, okay,
exactly.
Buddy.
He is very much like my little brother. Very much like my little brother.
I love my husband dearly. Yes.
I love, you know what else I love about him? Stats are for nerds unless they're his stats. You notice that?
Oh, yeah. Unless he thinks they matter, and then he'll just throw that all in there. Okay. Yeah.
One time I told him that, he's like, okay, touche.
Yes. But he knows it. He'll admit it.
I know he does. He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Is.
Okay, so I am going to just be aware, I had it on here what our next reading was, but since we've made this announcement that we're stretching this an extra time, I have to reshuffle our reading schedule. So I'll put that up maybe tonight at some point or tomorrow morning at the latest. So just be aware of that. I'm also going to be posting an addendum on this next week, which will have all of the missing pieces. There's missing pieces to this story.
To what I've already read? There's already missing things?
Not what you already read. It'll start with the next section forward. Okay. So there's all kinds of it's almost like, when you play video games and you have to unlock secrets and then it like opens up doors of things that you didn't know were supposed to, it's kind of like that, Okay. It's like magic.
Okay.
It goes with the theme of the book. We'll just say that.
Yes, perfect.
So some groundwork for this story. While writing Moby, Diana wrote several other stories at the same time, including Scottish Prisoner, and a lot of different novellas. So this novella was published in an anthology called The Mad Scientist's Guide to World Domination. So it was all about these kind of people that were like megalomaniacs and, like Frankensteins and people like this. This is what it was written for. So that's why it's a little bit woohoo, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and that was in February 2013. And that was written just a little bit after Lord John and the Plague of Zombies, which we did in the Beehive. And you'll see a lot of little parallels in there to that book because she, you know, we always look at this, Mary, what she wrote at the same time, because we can see little parallels between the stories. As she's writing multiple things, you
Very
start to
cool.
see she weaves in crossovers, you know.
Yeah.
Also, you know, prior to that, she wrote The Leaf on the Wind of All Hallows, which we're going to do next, and also The Plague of Zombies. So all of those kind of are in the same. They're written while Echo and Moby are going on, so you'll see kind of all these little crossovers and so forth in those stories. Later on, it came out again as a standalone book, and then again in Seven Stones. So what happens is when you have um, things that are released as an anthology first, and then there are multiple different types of releases, Diana can go back and re-edit things and touch things up, and then the editors get to them when they're re-released. So sometimes you get different versions, a little bit slightly different versions. And so that's why we have this master addendum that will fill in the missing spots. For instance, Amelie is talked about in the part that's missing, which is a big deal because we need to know if she could be Fergus's, you know, mother with, you know, with the comp. So that's going to be a big deal.
So was it written in a previous version and then it wasn't included inside this version?
It's written in the Trail of Fire, which is only in the UK. Okay, some of this stuff.
Wow, okay.
So, yeah, those UK people got all of the good stuff, you know. So one of the things too that's interesting about this novella is it's the only one that's written concurrently with the big books in time-wise. You know, it's like happening in the same year that we are in the big books, whereas other things are kind of other spots. So you kind of have to read it with a mind to merge that story in with what you're currently reading in the big books.
Okay.
So it makes it a little bit different. You kind of have multiple things out at one time, fitting it all back together, you know?
Yeah. Where is everybody at this time? Yeah.
Exactly. So we also have this anthology versus saga idea because originally, like I said, it was part of an anthology. It was designed to be part of an anthology. And while it fits in the theme of the book, the mad scientist world of domination, you know, and the thing is, to us, it's a very fascinating part of the Outlander verse. It kind of puts in a lot of bells and whistles for us.
Yeah.
It stills new twists and things. But I think, and it's a cornerstone book, I think, for Outlander fans. But if you were reading it as a standalone story, like in an anthology, I don't think it would be as meaningful for people. So it didn't really vibe a lot in the anthology version because if you didn't know the meaning of all of these things, it really wouldn't matter to you. You kind of don't know what you're reading. So, and like I said, I'll have an addendum that goes up tonight. And you guys are going to be like, because there'll be things in there you haven't even seen, I'm telling you.
So people like me should not be reading the addendum?
Yes,
if
read
we
the
haven't.
addendum.
Okay, so the addendum is okay.
Read
You've only read
it'll
up to
be
page
what
90?
it'll be is it'll be coordinated with the page numbers, okay, of the book. Good. And it'll say on like page, you know, 170 whatever, and then in bold print it'll have what's missing on that page. Right. You know what I'm saying? So just read to what.
So I just know what number I'm going towards in the pages as we do these week by week.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Exactly. So you know Diana gives a shape to every story. This one is shaped like a French braid, and she says that there are 3 separate strands to start with, but as each strand goes, they each pick up pieces from the other strands along the way, and then you tie it up in a pretty bow around the end and leave wisps of loose ends to flow below it. So that is how she describes the shape of the book.
Gorgeous.
Because there's 3 main storylines. Okay. Another little Diana D is Michael and Joan's emotional story is the complete arc, the emotional arc in this book. What happens with the Comte and Master Raymond is part of a much larger arc that runs through the whole saga. So it's kind of like you have one part of it that's just really this story, and then the other stuff you're kind of meant to plug in to the overall knowledge of Outlander verse.
Okay.
So it kind of serves 2 masters there.
Okay.
She says, with luck, you'll find both explanation and conclusion of that stuff if when I write the Master Raymond books, she says. So a little background to get us up to speed, just, from you, Mary, because you haven't been reading it with us.
Yeah.
The last time we saw the Comte, he was on the floor dead.
Yeah.
Yes,
This was a
from
big
the
surprise.
poison. From the poison. That, he did a little bit of bibbity bobbity boo on the poison cup, and next thing you know, he was splat on the ground.
Yes.
So we get the story of what happened after that. And apparently he only gave him like a fake dead poison to make him look dead for like a certain amount of time. He woke up in the morgue, as you read, and we'll go over that. But that's the last we saw him. Okay, so that's where we left off with him, season 2. But he's been doing a lot since then, apparently. Yeah. I love his perspective in this book because it really gives him a more human. He's not like this just evil caricature villain.
Evil. Yeah.
Yeah, he actually has there's actually like a lot of warmth to him, and kind of parts of you kind of like him in this book a little bit. Not like him, but understand him better. He's humanized a little more. Then we have Michael Murray, and the last time we saw him was in Echo. He's so great. I love Michael Murray.
Yes.
And the last time we saw him was in Echo, and when Ian Sr. died. This is happening just after he died. So we're picking up the story right after Echo. It was also when we saw Joan, and she was asking that she wanted to become a nun and get her dowry from Jamie. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And so Michael was going to escort her after Ian passed away, and that's where we're picking up the story. They're in the English Channel, so it literally picks up right after that ends. And she wanted to be a nun, but we never really understood why she wanted to be a nun. She just felt it was a calling. She said that. That story is going to change as well, as we know. Already can see that. And then we have Galus. The last time we saw Galus, which of course she's dead now, okay, at the time of this story. She's not coming back in this part of the story, don't get me wrong. But
so
she's
you're
going
saying
to be
Galus,
referenced.
but I'm very confused.
No, she's referenced.
Yeah.
And we find out that she sent things to the Comte and so forth,
Okay.
I think that, we kind of are led to believe that he and her had an affair when she was in France under Melisande, because she was in France the whole time. We found that out in Voyager. She was in France the whole time that the Frasers were there, but under on the sly.
Different name,
And I think, her and the Comte were having some rumpy-pumpy and sharing secrets and so forth. So I think probably when he woke up on the slab, he probably went to her to get help, to get himself in order. And she kind of went to puzzling at what happened to him and what he was given.
Yeah.
So that's probably what I think happened there. I know, right?
Yeah.
And then we had Master Raymond. The last we saw him was also in Dragonfly and Amber. And he had to skedaddle after the wizard trial thing. So we haven't seen him since. But he's been roaming around, jumping through time. And then we're also going to meet Mother Hildegard in this book, and Jared. So we also saw them. So a lot of it's like old home week for the Dragonfly and Amber. Yes.
Blake was coming to try to say hi. Blake!
Oh.
First off, please open my door. You closed off my air conditioning. And second
I
of
know,
all, you
right?
can wave. He came in and closed the door, and I'm like, I'm gonna be sweating. Sorry. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. But
I know.
I'm also
Why
gonna
have
become a
water
sweating
ice?
mess.
Why I have water ice, right? I'm like dying too. And so thoughts on themes. This is like, what do you got? Do you have any thoughts on themes that you've seen so far?
No.
On what you read?
No? Because I've never read this novella before, I was just like, whoa, I didn't know what to expect. I really didn't. And like you said, this one has so much of the magic and the mystery and the time traveling, which is one of the main reasons that I fell in love with the Outlander series. And then of course you're there so much for the relationships and the historical context and all the interweaving of Diana's brilliant brain. But it's not that like magical whimsy and time travel isn't always there. It's not like as prevalent as it was. So, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm like all into this like fantasy kind of, the more magic, the better.
Right.
So for me to be reading this and have the auras and to be like, oh my gosh, like
Yes.
this is what's been going on. I don't even know where I am theme wise. I'm just know I'm here for it. So if you can
Okay,
tell me
good.
what theme I'm
Good.
supposed to be feeling within these 20
Well, I
pages,
just
I'm
was
here.
saying this is the most supernatural of the stories, and there's a lot of like scientific sorcery, auras, visions, voices, and more things that I can't even really talk about right now. And so I kind of think a lot of it is also about life and death and what you
Mm,
do with the choices that you face, overcoming things that hit you, overcoming adversity and what you do when you're faced with choices, which is like a lot of what's happening to Joan,
yes.
in this story, as well as really all of them. I want to read this Diana Deet real quick. This is our intro. Like when we first start a story, I kind of give you a little background to kind of before we start breaking into it. We won't be doing this every week. This is just to kind of get us into it.
Yeah.
So this is her just basically talking about how she kind of developed the story. She says, I was really pleased with how the story came out. It took a lot of effort. I rewrote it twice. First, because it just didn't work when I tried to cram it all into the 25,000 word limit for the anthology. Well, they wanted 15 and said I could have 25. And so I told the editor I wanted to withdraw the story. He got excited, assured me I could have as much room as I wanted and take as much time as I needed. So I took another 2 months and rewrote it to 35,000 words, which was a lot better. And I reluctantly let him have it. But I also asked my regular UK editor, who would be publishing it as part of Trial by Fire, to look it over and let me have his comments. That helped me clarify the last necessary bits. This is why there's extra bits all over the place,
Mhm.
The last necessary bits, along with the usual sparks of last-minute pipe welding. The final version came out right around 40,000 words. I began with 3 separate storylines, or rather 2. I originally thought it might be a story told between Michael and Joan's point of view, with them recounting what they saw from the outside of the comp's activities. So as to keep those more mysterious, it rapidly became clear that the comp had his own story, though, and it couldn't be told entirely from the outside. He didn't know what was going on, even though he thought he did. So at that point, it became a true braided narrative. The space between means something different to all 3 of them, and that's why I went with that title, though it was less striking than my original Terror Demonium, which is the terror of demons. So that's what Diana has to say on it. So a few title thoughts. The original title was the Terror Demonium. Um, Space between, the idea of space between is multi-layered. There's something different for each of the 3 characters, as she said, and we're going to kind of pull them out as we go, But
Okay.
there's also the idea overall for the book. Do you have any idea like on that, because the whole book is in the space between 2 big books. So it's kind of the book itself is the
Oh,
space between,
yeah.
and
Oh,
then
I like
each of
that.
the people's stories have an element of the idea of the space between. So it kind of,
Okay.
all 3 of them have that.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to now break into it. So how many
Yes.
honey pots do you give these, this section?
This section,
The first quarter of the story.
I gotta tell you, I mean, those of you who do not listen to Outlander cast, you're gonna find it right now. I am an optimist and I am a happy, like, give all the points. I'm giving it straight up 5 honey pots. I
Oh,
am so
good. I'm so
excited to
glad
be
to
just
hear
like
that.
jumping on in. And Angela, I had no idea what to expect. I didn't,
Right.
snoop and read ahead. I've just told myself like, okay, I'm just gonna go on in and do this fresh. And it was just so unexpected, I think,
Right.
because I didn't do any research whatsoever. I wanted to just look at it with brand
Good.
new eyes. So literally when I open it and he still didn't know why the frog hadn't killed him. Paul Rosinski, however you say his last name, Comte Saint Germain, and I literally went, "What? Like this is what it's gonna be about!" I was so excited, and
Wow,
just
that's
to
great.
have fun and to be seeing the auras. I'm here for all the supernaturalness, so
Yes,
it was
you'll love
just
this story then.
yeah,
You will
yeah,
love this one. I gave it 4.8 because I know I like to kind of know what's coming, so I like to
yeah,
give myself room to move up. But
yeah.
I'm usually a high grader too, not quite as high as you, but usually more than Blake. I kind of fall between the 2 of you
Good,
usually.
yeah.
So
You're the
I
bell
went
curve.
with 4.8. And being that this is a French braid with the 3 strands, I think because they're separated right now, We haven't seen them cross paths yet. Well, Joan and Michael are
Yeah.
two that are together, but I mean, the Compt and them haven't crossed paths yet. So I'm going to kind of take them separately for
Okay.
this first week.
Yes.
I just thought it would be easier that way. So,
Yeah.
so before we do, we're gonna, like I said, we did the good, bad, great thing. Oh, good, bad, great. That's what I said. Okay. Take a page from Mary Blake, and
Yeah.
do the good, bad, great for this section.
So yes, we started this because I just love, Oreos, and I love sandwiching, and that space between even works here too, right? We've got this like
Hmm.
three-part thing, so our good, our bad, and our great for this bit.
And it's
My good,
optimistic. It's like
yes.
double the good stuff for one bad thing. So I
It
like it.
is. Yeah. My good is just I love when Diana gets supernatural and funky. I just love it. I mean, she's so intelligent and amazing with all of her historic details and just brilliant with the relationship building. I mean, she could have just focused on that kind of stuff for all of her entire writing and still hit it out of the ballpark. But when she sprinkles in the supernatural, that's when I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, look at you, fancy. So that's my good. My
Hmm.
bad is death auras. Oh God, like poor Joan. Oh my gosh. I just, this is little Joni, and like, it's one thing to have read about her in the books and everything, but I just picture her like dancing with Jamie, at Hungary, like just having fun. And I'm like, she sees these people in like death shrouds. So
I see dead
that's who I'm
people,
picturing.
right?
Yeah. So I
Like
can't even
Sixth
picture
Sense.
like adult Joan. I see the kid
Right.
from Sixth Sense. I just see little Joan, like so cute with like seeing dead people. So that's why I feel so badly, as I picture the television, 6-year-old Jonah, however old she was.
Right.
And then, yeah, my great is Jesus H. Roosevelt Christ, the Comte. That's it. Just the second sentence, it just blew my mind, and I'm so excited to be hanging out with him.
Ah,
And the Court of Miracles, I know you put it up as an extra, but one of the movies that I always love to talk about, because I have a love-hate relationship with it, is the Disney Hunchback of Notre Dame. And so just to be in this supernatural world back with a Comte who is he was an odd, fun character for us to get to know,
yes.
for him to be back. So that is my great.
Yes, and you really get a whole different side of him. It's really true when Diana gives you the POV of a character, it changes the whole ball game,
Yeah.
because you get to be in their mind. You don't get all the reputation, you just get what they are more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it always just gives you a whole new insight. And you guys down here on the board, I'm kind of keeping an eye on you. I won't be able to interact as much as I usually do. That's why I'm doing the after buzz. But I am looking, so if you have good, bad, greats, put them up. If I see them, I'll shout them out. And your honeypot ratings. Oh, look at Mary. She's already on it with the posting it. So good. This is why I'm so unused to having a partner. It's like
I
thrilling for
know.
me.
Having a
It is.
co-host,
It's
you're like,
so
oh, I can
thrilling.
breathe. Yeah.
It's like I don't have to think about all of that stuff. I
No.
have another pair of eyes. It's lovely.
Yes.
Um, See, I'm so jelly. I'm jealous of you guys up there always having each other's back.
Yeah.
Um, so
So
my
your
good,
GBGs,
bad,
yeah.
great. Yes, my GBGs. For me, the good was having the comp POV. Really having all of the POVs. You have. I always love POVs and points of view in the stories, and I love when she adds more, because it not only does it give you their perspective and change the way you see that character, but it also adds like another layer to the other characters. We're going to see Jeannie and Claire through all three of these people and their perceptions of them from the outside. So it just adds like another layer of characterization
Mm-hmm.
into the existing characters. Plus, you get like new perspectives, and I always just love that. So I love getting three meaningful ones all in this story. Um, my bad is snakes and reaching in bags for rats.
Yeah.
Like, those are like
No.
two things I hate. Rats, like, totally, I mean, literally, my husband will laugh at me. Just the mouse in the cabinet, I literally start having a nervous breakdown and stand in the middle of the
Oh
kitchen screaming
no.
my face off. So the idea of him putting rats all in a bag and then just
Yeah.
reaching in the bag and flinging rats out, no, no, no. And then that
Not your
giant
bag.
python thing just sitting there while it squirms around the house.
Yep.
Nah, not great,
Not for
Bob.
you.
Not doing that.
Not for
Not
you.
doing that. And my great is Michael and Joan's budding connection through this book and how each of them are like these two lost souls, you know. Each of them are dealing with such, like challenges for them. And they find this little bits of support in each other that kind of help get them through. So I kind of love that. The last scene we had in this reading was just really lovely. So it's one of my favorites. So let's break it down. We have Paul Ricosi, the Comte Saint Germain.
Mm.
Ricosi? Is it
I,
Ricosi or
no,
Ricosi?
I have
Okay.
no idea. I have absolutely no idea. I was like, Paul Rosa. Like, I
Right.
don't know. So,
But this is all real. I,
Ricosi
I
sounds
did
good.
post some extras. You guys, I saw that you guys, uh, Kimberly said, good, Joan is an adult. Bad, the rats and snakes. Great, the supernatural stuff. So Kimberly kind of agrees with us there.
Yeah.
Barb says, bad, the rats, and the great was sad as well. Michael grieving for his wife, but the memories of the farts in bed.
Oh my gosh. Laughed so much for that.
That was great.
It
That was
was
great. She
awesome.
gets marriages. Like
Yes.
she depicts marriages like real
Very
stuff in
realistic.
marriages. So
Yes.
good. Yeah, I love it. Um, so the story opens in Paris, 1778, with the Comte, and we open right up with the Comte. It's just like boop, slapped you right in the face. And what a shock, right? You like you said, to find him
Yes.
alive. That's the shock number one. Was that he was
Mm-hmm.
alive. Shock number two is that Gayless and the Comte were like these intimate, at least friends, very intimate, sharing
Yes.
magic and secrets, talking time travel with each other.
I mean, good
And
for them. Hey, they found
oh,
commonality, and we all
definitely.
found each other through Outlander, and they just found each other through time traveling and magic, and doing weird stuff.
And they're kind of a good match, wouldn't you
Yeah.
say? Definitely like evil meets evil, great.
Yes. They'd be a perfect match on
Conniving
Tinder.
meets conniving, it's a good
Yes.
match.
Mm-hmm.
And we open up with the Comte conducting an experiment on rats, and he's been giving rats various doses of a poison sent to him many years ago by Melisande. Now we know she's been dead for like 11, 12
Yes.
years now.
Yes.
So that means that, he said the last time he was in Paris around this time was 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that it was sent after he left, but before she died. So probably in the 3-year period between
Yeah.
15 years ago and 12 years ago.
Is there an expiration date?
I was just about to say that, like this can't be good. And then he feeds
Yeah.
all these poisoned rats to the freaking snake. Like, isn't the snake going to drop dead with
I
all this
know.
poison in his system?
Right?
I was a
Yeah.
little bit worried about the snake. Not too worried, but a
I'm
little
not
bit.
too worried about the
A wee
snake. I'm
bit.
like, well, yeah. That's another
Poor
experiment.
Leopold. Um, so, so Gayless, so this is the Gayless zombie poison. You remember that, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so this is what she's sending him. And then the Comte says he can't forget the time that he himself was similarly in a dead state 30
Mm-hmm.
some years ago. And we get his perspective. And note the way, when I play this first clip, note the way that he observes light and the way he describes light, and the way he's fascinated with light. You can tell he has a reactive element to auras and light because even just regular light, he like sees it in a whole deeper way, all
Yeah.
through this book. You'll see that. So that's right up in the beginning, and you'll see that in the beginning. Let me get um I'm so used to doing it with my
Oh
finger. I put
yeah,
on my
don't
computer.
worry. I'm so excited to
Why
have
isn't
like
it
audio
working?
clips. This is so great. Yeah.
It was late afternoon, and the early spring sun of Paris was like honey, warm and sticky on his face, but glowing in the rounded globes of glass, throwing pools of red and brown and green on the wood from the liquids contained therein. The only discordant note in this peaceful symphony of light was the body of a large rat lying on its back in the middle of the workbench, a pocket watch open beside it.
To
The Count
which I
put
wrote
his
in my book,
fingers
ew.
delicately on the rat's chest and waited patiently. It didn't take so long this time. He was used to the coldness as his mind felt its way into the body. Nothing. no hint of light in his mind's eye, no warm red of a pulsing heart. He glanced at the watch. Half an hour. He took his fingers away, shaking his head. Melisande, you evil bitch, he murmured, not without affection. You didn't think I'd try anything you set me on myself, did you? Still, he himself had stayed dead a great while longer than half an hour when the frog had given him the dragon's blood. It had been early evening when he went into Louis's star chamber 30 years before, heart beating with excitement at the coming confrontation. A duel of wizards, with a king's favor as the stakes, and one he thought he'd win. He remembered the purity of the sky, the beauty of the stars just visible, Venus bright on the horizon, and the joy of it in his blood. Everything always had a greater intensity when you knew life could cease within the next few minutes. And an hour later, he thought his life had ceased, the cup falling from his numbed hand, the coldness rushing through his limbs with amazing speed, freezing the words, "I've lost," an icy core of disbelief in the center of his mind. He hadn't been looking at the fog. The last thing he had seen through darkening eyes was the woman, La Dame Blanche, her face over the cup she'd given him appalled and white as bone. But what he recalled, and recalled again now with the same sense of astonishment and avidity, was the great flare of blue, intense as the color of the evening sky beyond Venus, that had burst from her head and shoulders as he died. He didn't recall any feeling of regret or fear, just astonishment. This was nothing, however, to the astonishment he felt when he regained his senses, naked on a stone slab in a revolting subterranean chamber next to a drowned corpse.
Ugh.
Luckily, there had been no one alive in that disgusting grotto, and he had made his way, reeling and half-blind, clothed in the drowned man's wet and stinking shirt, out into a dawn more beautiful than any twilight could ever be.
Feel the light stuff.
10 to 12 hours from the moment of apparent death to revival. He glanced at the rat, then put out a finger and lifted one of the small, neat paws. Nearly 12 hours. Limp. The rigor had already passed. It was warm up here at the top of the house. Then he turned to the counter that ran along the far wall of the laboratory, where a line of rats lay, possibly insensible, probably dead. He walked slowly along the line, prodding each body. Limp, limp, stiff, stiff, stiff.
That's what she said.
Right? Nice.
So I had to end there. I was like, I got to do it. That's what she said. With
Yes.
a limp, limp,
Oh
stiff,
my
stiff,
goodness.
stiff. So Mary, can you imagine this, right? You know, you wake up 12 hours later on a stone slab in a tomb next to a corpse, right? It's like,
Ugh.
you know, you thought you were going to die.
Yeah.
What do you make of him seeing La Dame Blanche's blue aura? Because apparently he didn't see this before, like shot up in his dying moment. You think
Yes.
it was like a developing thing that now that was the first he saw those things?
I'm
This was
wondering if it's
30 years
because he was
ago.
finally just aware of her. You know what I mean? Because
Uh-huh.
there's been mention of her blue aura before. So I don't know if like either that's just when it blossomed or if he was just kind of so self-obsessed and he couldn't really see past himself and see other people, that if in this moment he realized he finally opened his eyes to Claire's abilities, you know?
Okay.
That's how I read it, but I don't know.
I don't know now. I thought maybe it was that he was 30 years younger, and maybe like that was the first, like his powers of that sort were developing, you know, because Claire's getting hers when she's old, you know.
Yeah.
So I would imagine maybe it's something that grew in time, because at first I thought maybe it was because she was so upset, and like she had this spark to want to heal because she knew he was going to die, and like her natural vibe was to figure out a way she could stop it, because her motive is to always try to heal,
to help, yeah.
and that might have made it come like to be bright, you know what I mean? That was another, I don't know, I just wanted to see your take on it. So also notice the bit about his mind feeling its way into the rat's body.
Oh, yeah.
And that's our first indication that he has this healer's ability, like Raymond, And like you see Claire
Like Claire.
developing
Yeah.
when she gets into her full power, she'll be able to probably do what the comp's doing now,
Yeah.
where he can kind of have the healer sense to penetrate systems of the body. So
Mm-hmm.
very interesting. He determines they're dead, but he can't be sure of the last one. So he wants to be sure because he's heard among the Paris underground, the court of miracles,
Yeah.
where like the outcasts and the underworld con artists and all the
All these,
undesirables and so
yes.
forth, they all congregate in this seedy place. And he heard that Raymond the Frog is back.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's like old home week, Mary, like
I
they're
love
all
it.
back, all the Paris
Yes.
gang coming
I'm
back
here
together,
for it. I'm here for it. Yes.
And he wants to see him, or at least he wants to see him, if not talk to him, because he wants
Mm-hmm.
to see if he is still this like 30 years older than what he was before. If he looks
Yes.
older.
Yes.
So, what is your first impression of the comp here in this first section? What was your first? Were you surprised, and where do you think he's been? Um,
I mean, yeah, my jaw just dropped. I was
Right.
so surprised and shocked to be saying, okay, this is who we're talking about, and this is where we are, and we're in Paris, a place that I wasn't expecting to go back to.
You didn't
Nonetheless,
even
with the
know that?
No,
You didn't
I
even
knew
know it was going to be
nothing.
in Paris?
Nothing.
Wow.
I mean, I
Wow.
literally was like, I'm not listening. We're doing anything. I was 100% like trying to be as brand new to all this as I possibly could, because I always think that that's really fun, and I know that
Yes.
pretty much, probably 99% of the people who are tuning in for this have already read it, so I figured I'll give it the most fresh eyes that I possibly can. Yeah, so I mean, just having the first thing honestly that stood out to me once I reread it was the date of the 1778. So trying to piece together, okay, this, it has a lot of time has passed. So exactly what has he been up to?
Right.
And to read the bit about him trying to work inside the rat's body, it brought about so much of Master Raymond and Claire, and just the level of like his abilities that I didn't know he fully, that he even had. So
Right.
to me, it just seems like he's been spending his time refining his craft. And that's what I think he's been doing. Throughout these chapters and stuff, we really get to find out that he spends his time going around chatting with everybody. He comes back to the same place. He seems very meticulous, remembering all these different things. So, he seems like just a student of his craft, and I think that's what he's been doing.
And so forth. Yes. And so it's nearly twilight, and how did his connection? Oh, how did his connection to Galis? Talk about dangerous liaisons, right? And he seems to have her number. He seems to have her number. He knows, like, I can't really trust her.
Yes.
And I just love that, how he kind of was like, Melisande, you bitch, you thought I'd actually take something you gave me, without trying on something else. I love it, and he does it with affection. Like, he's like affectionately saying she's a bitch.
Yeah. I mean, it makes you feel good because you're like, oh, okay, he knows who he's up against. Because,
Yes.
I don't love I know that you said that, we're going to be spending, of course, more time from his perspective throughout this story. I don't love him right now.
No,
but it's just kind of funny to be like.
But he's more human. That's all I'm saying. He's more human.
Yes.
He's not like this evil caricature like he was in the second book,
Yeah. I mean, we're still so early that he still is slightly, but it's more of, like you said, you get to kind of see him as he's making his plan. So I do find it quite interesting.
You get his motivations. You get more of his motivations.
Yes.
So it's nearly twilight and the rats are still dead, and he hears the bells of Notre Dame, and he looks at his watch and he says they were 2 minutes early, and he frowned because he doesn't like sloppiness. So that tells you a little bit about him, that he's a scientist. He's about precision, And we learn that the comp is desperately searching for a way to travel forward in time because he hasn't done that yet. And since he doesn't have any minutes with Mary, he is looking to slow down the aging process.
Yes.
I mean, seriously, don't we all want to slow down the aging process? I mean, welcome to the club, dude. Yes.
Stop going to the pubs and drink some water.
Exactly. Welcome to the club. We all want to slow down the aging process. That's not just about you. But with him, though, it's an obsession. It's an obsession. And this was true of the real Comte. I put that up in the extras. He believed that he could achieve immortality.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a little bit of a narcissist there, like thinks he can become immortal. And originally he thought he could go to an earlier time in his lifetime, to kind
And
of
that would
like relive
reverse.
his
Yeah.
20s. And that's not great, Bob, because
No.
I
do not want to go back and look at myself in the 20s. I'll tell you that. I'll be like, Mary, stop. Stop.
And notice in this next little clip, he hears the crackles of his back like a firing squad.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the connotation of a firing squad. He feels his death is coming, by hearing these little crackles in his back. So I kind of love the imagery there.
Yeah.
Let me see.
It's gonna make me think that every time I crack.
I know, exactly. Me too.
Yeah,
Me
it's within the
too.
past year. I've had this routine where I lay down in bed and it's like I crack different parts of my body, like my legs and then my toes, and then and I'm like, oh, this is what happens when you get older.
Yes,
it's
definitely, you get to have a little symphony in your body.
Yeah. I'll think symphony rather than firing squad, though.
Spine cracked like the ragged volley of a firing squad. No doubt about it, he was aging, and the thought sent a chill through him. If he could find the way forward, then perhaps. She never knew. That was the devil of it. For a little while he'd hoped, that traveling back in time stopped the process of aging. That initially seemed logical, like rewinding a clock. But then again, it wasn't logical, because he'd always gone back farther than his own lifetime. Only once he tried to go back just a few years, to his early 20s. That was a mistake, and he still shivered at the memory.
So it likely ended with him on fire, like the other people we've seen that tried to do that.
Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, that's not good, That hypothesis is off the table, right?
Yes, we're taking that one off. Massive fail. Yeah.
Massive fail, epic fail. So I'm really loving, like I said, these glimpses of his point of view and how they inform his character, all his scientific observations and his notes of the stars and the moon and the different constellations and how he sees others. And Diana really develops him as a character in the story. And that's why I have a wag, which is in our words, that's wild ass gas wag. That's what we mean, like a theory.
Okay.
That's why I have a wag that he will make an appearance in Bees. I think we're going to see him popping, because if you looked at the extras I put, there was like rumors of the comped around with the revolution, with the American Revolution. So, she could work it. And plus, all this stuff is tied into him, this
cool.
inheritance and Fergus being his son and all of this other kind of stuff that's going on. So it's kind of like it would make sense. I mean, why else would she write this story while she's writing these two stories?
Yes.
She kind of really develops this person as his own character. And so you kind of think, yeah, he could surprise us. So that's my kind of little wag on,
I like that.
on how this might impact our story to come. So let me see where I am here. So we learn that each time he returns to Paris, he's visited the same house, like you said, either as an owner or a guest. And his view of the river stays constant, and that's kind of how he grounds himself. And keeps like some kind of sense of constancy over the last 200 years. And putting aside all his thoughts, he puts all these dead rats in a sack, plans to take them to the Court of Miracles where he's going to bar hop and visit a brothel. And it's like, like, sure, why wouldn't you want to take a bag of dead rats with you out on the town while you bar hop and go to brothels? That's just
it's probably
what,
places that they wouldn't notice the smell. Yeah, right?
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
It's like gross.
He is like
so
concerned.
He went to multiple bars, too. He went to a couple bars carrying this bag of rats. Ugh.
Oh my gosh. I could just picture him though, like going for like the 5 o'clock special, the cheap thing on tap. All right. And you're only gonna get like 2. So then he goes to another bar and gets their happy hour and stuff. But he's there with just a sack of smelly dead rats. And that's all I thought. I was like, it's because
he's in the Court of Miracles, so they're all like, whatever, they probably didn't even faze him.
They probably guessed. They were like at the bar, like, oh, what do you think that guy was in that guy's sack?
What's in the sack?
I bet rats.
Yes, I bet, yes. That makes sense. So why is it that you think that it's so important to him to go forward, to learn how to go forward? What do you think he wants with this? We know he wants to figure out if he can somehow use that to reverse age.
Yes, yes. I mean, that's where I'm at right now, is just to continue to understand the physics more of time traveling, not just you going to be able to time travel, but can you also do things to alter your body? That's where I'm at right now.
Also, it could be that he wants to be able to see his fate and then change it. Go back and, like, if he was supposed to die at this place or this time or from this,
Ooh,
go back and
yeah.
change it eventually. It gives him more knowledge. Plus, being a scientist, I think he wants to go forward just to kind of see the things
See
of what the
technology and
potential is. Yeah, and then be able to have that in his repertoire, you know? So he's planning to go to Madame Fabienne's, but it's early, so he's going to visit this obscure drinking places where he's going to be able to judge how he can, easily he can talk about Raymond. And
With
so,
Max, right? Because that's where he
yes,
goes and he meets
he goes
Max.
to Max, yes,
So he
and
thinks it's Max.
and he wants to know. He's like trying to be careful because the last time he was there was 15 years ago, and he tries to pace out his face so that people don't recognize him that were around before. And so he's nervous. He's a little fearful about Raymond, it seems, and whether he's a time traveler too. And so, the way he talks about his planning and how he orchestrates his time traveling and how he's done it multiple times, always to the past, but multiple times.
Yeah.
He seems to be the most, beyond not counting Raymond, because we don't really see him traveling yet, so we don't know what he does.
Yeah.
But of the ones that we see, he seems to be the most accomplished of the known time travelers. Like, that seems to have a good handle on how it all works, and from what we've met so far. And he seems to be able to control the process without really suffering a lot of damage.
Yeah.
So the comp thinks that Raymond could probably answer a lot of questions. Also, he's fearful of him, but he also has some hope. How do you think this eventual meeting is going to go? Just kind of prognosticating on your part. How do you see it going when they finally meet up?
Well, okay, so the ribbit thing, where there was like someone who said ribbit in this bar, I took it as that was Master Raymond. Like, I just took it as that was him there.
Being sneaky.
And because of that, that's kind of how I think it's going to be. Like, a little bit like he's always trailing him and then kind of teasing and like, those
like, you don't know as much as you think you know, dude. Like, kind of put him in the spot.
Yeah, and maybe answering questions with other questions and then just walking away,
Yes.
Like, I know that you want to talk to me, so I'm just going to play really hard to get,
Yes, definitely. So he goes and he recognizes this dwarf behind the counter, and other customers are kind of a little bit odd, but it reflects the place that he is. This Court of Miracles. There's a bunch of odd characters. And he requests a drink. He calls the dwarf Max, like you said. And it turns out that he's the son of the previous landlord that he knew, And he asks if Master Raymond or the frog is still alive. Now, note that it says here, besides Max and his pops being well hung, which is what notes in here, which is kind of a little bit of funny. When the comp asks for Raymond, notice what he senses around him. So we're going to play that real quick. Should have had it up.
It's all good. We've got this. I'm just so excited to be here, and we've got loads of you also joining
Some time
online.
since I was last here, he said. No lie there. I wonder if another old acquaintance might be still alive. Maître Raymond, otherwise called the Frog. There was a tiny quiver in the air, a barely perceptible flicker of attention, gone almost as soon as he'd sensed it. Somewhere behind him. A frog, Maxime said, meditatively pouring himself a drink.
Notice that? It just happened?
I don't know any frogs myself, but should I hear of one, who shall I say is asking for him? Should he give his name? No, not yet. It doesn't matter, he said, but word can be left with Madame Fabienne. You know the place? In the Rue Antoine? The dwarf's sketchy brows rose and his mouth turned up at one corner. I know it. Doubtless he did, Ratcozy thought. El Maximo hadn't referred to Max's stature, and probably Legrand didn't either. God had a sense of justice as well as a sense of humor. Bon. He wiped his lips on his sleeve and put down a coin that would have bought the whole keg. Merci. He stood up, the hot taste of the brandy bubbling at the back of his throat, and belched. 2 more places to visit, maybe, before he went to Fabienne's. He couldn't visit more than that and stay upright. He was getting old. Good night.
He's focused on
He
that
bowed
old.
to the company
Yeah.
and gingerly pushed open the cracked wooden door. It was hanging by one leather hinge, and that looked ready to give way at any moment. Ribby, someone said very softly, just before the door closed behind him.
So he leaves. So, like, he felt this presence when he asked for the
Yes.
name. It's almost like the Voldemort thing in
Mhm.
Harry Potter. You're like, I'm dropping the Harry Potter
Ooh,
reference.
I dig it.
A
I
newbie
dig
that
it.
I am. But it's kind of like you don't say Voldemort out loud,
Yes.
and you almost feel like he summoned him or something when he said
Mhm.
his name.
Yes.
All of a sudden, he felt this eerie sense behind him,
Mhm. Mhm.
that he literally felt. So you almost get a picture, like these are the little things it's telling you in the sub-level, is that like that whole sense that time travelers can sense each other, kind of like
Yes.
the Mandy Gem thing, how they
Mhm. Yeah.
sense each other, they have their little radar.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of like that. So
Mhm.
you get a sense of that between these two very high level kind of seeming people here.
Mhm.
So before he even like knew anything, and then he left and he hears the ribbit. So it's kind of like his way of being like, I'm here, I see you,
Yeah.
Um,
I love
so
it. But I'm like, if that was me, I would have just turned around right away and been like, where are you? But
he didn't know if like people were screwing with him or what, but
yes.
we know that that's exactly what he did to Claire. Remember back when
Mhm.
he said, about the front, and he said ribbit. That's like a
Yep.
thing he does. So we know it was
Yes.
him.
Yes.
We call that an echo in the beehive. We
I
got
like
used to
that.
calling these echoes. We call them out all the time. Um, so do you think that as well, that he was in the room? That was going to be a
Yes.
question I
That's
had
how
for
I
you.
took it. That I do think that he's in the room.
And you do get a sense that he's known to these people, and that somebody had to know he was there,
Mhm.
but and the comp senses his presence. Do you think that the barman and the drinkers knew that he was there, and they were either trying to be protective of him and not outing him, or were they afraid of him and didn't out him?
Ooh. I definitely took it that the frog was there, and I took it that the bartender knew, or at least had like an inkling. But I didn't necessarily feel that like everyone was in on it, but who knows? But I got the gist that he was there. That's why he had that weird sensation when he entered, but that also I felt like the bartender knew, at least remotely, like a little bit about who
So
he
do you
was
think
talking
he
about.
didn't say anything because he was trying to protect him, or because he was
Yeah.
afraid of him?
I kind of took it as because like he has no allegiance to anybody. Like I don't know him. I don't know you. I'm not gonna
Not
help
my
anybody
business,
out.
right?
Yeah.
Not my business.
Yeah. I just took it as like
Um,
the bartender just being a bartender. Like I'm just gonna do my job, pour you a drink. I don't know what you're talking about.
yep. So last on the comp, we take a weird turn, okay, on our last section on the comp. And they'll get weirder. So just prepare thyself, it
Okay.
will get weirder. So the
Ready.
comp arrives at Madame Fabian's, and the whore Madeline, who the comp is now targeting to be with for a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah.
throws her arms around him, and we hear his ability in action. Okay, so we're going to play that real quick. And while I'm playing this, I'm going to take a look at what people are saying, because I do want to react a little with the board here. Number 4. Where is my number 4? Number 5, 9. Give me a second. Vamp. 1. Where is it? It must be this one, because it's the only one not numbered. So I'm going to go for it.
Yes. I'm feeling it.
You're feeling it.
I'm feeling it like the
Okay.
comp.
Okay.
Monsieur Ratcootsie. She flung her arms about his neck, nuzzling affectionately. Madeline, my dear. He cupped her chin and kissed her gently on the lips, drawing her close so that her belly pressed against his. He held her long enough, kissing her eyelids, her forehead, her ears, so that she made high squeaks of pleasure, that he could feel his way inside her, hold the weight of her womb in his mind, evaluate her ripening. It felt warm, the colour in the heart of a dark crimson rose, the kind called sang de dragon. A week before it had felt solid, compact as a folded fist. Now it had begun to soften, to hollow slightly as she readied. 3 more days, he wondered. 4? He let her go, and when she pouted prettily at him, he laughed and raised her hand to his lips, feeling the same small thrill he had felt when he first found her, as the faint blue glow rose between her fingers in response to his touch. She couldn't see it. He'd raised their linked hands to her face before, and she'd merely looked puzzled. But it was there. Go and fetch some wine, ma belle, he said, squeezing her hand gently. I need to talk to madame.
So, by the way, I wanted to read Ellen on the board says that she took it that the people in the bar covered for Master Raymond more out of fear than being protective of him. Diane also says that they were protecting him until he told them to accept the comp. And Karen, who's from Sweden, she said she was wondering if she should feel offended that he apparently preferred to go to the past than to Sweden.
I would be offended. I'll go to Sweden.
Really? She's so faithful, Karen. She stays up all night with me every time I'm on, so she's sweet. Anyway, so it's fascinating and very eerie to hear how this power works, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's almost, it seems like what Claire is approaching when her hair turns white. But we also see Claire starting to do things like that with like not realizing it's a power, but just kind of what she does. You know, she goes inside herself. She kind of can see, close her eyes, and actually does like surgical things and medical things with her eyes closed because she can sense into somebody. But she just is like, I just feel it. I can't really explain it. But she doesn't think anything of it. But it's this developing in her, you know, what's going on with the comp already. And comp has it like seriously, like telling, you know, when you're ovulating and all of this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's like crazy. So, you know, what did you make of that encounter? Were you surprised what all that he could tell just from giving her a hug, basically, and a kiss? He was able to sense all that, just basically embracing her. Like
I feel like that was laid out for me from the rat. So when he was able to like sense different things about the rat, then it made sense that he could sense these different things with her. Of course, to me, I'm reading this and I'm like, okay, well, he wants to make a baby with her so that this can be like a super magical baby. Because she doesn't realize that she doesn't know what she is. Magic going on. Exactly. So she's got it too. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in 3 or 4 days. But I wasn't blown away because of what he had done with the rat, and exactly because of the Claire stuff. So you're just,
but this is even more specific body systems and like how much, you know, like how her ripening is. He's feeling her way into her womb and all of this kind of thing. It's like more than just being able to tell if something's alive or not, you know, like this was a little more intense. This kind of really taking it up a notch. Taking it up a notch. So the comp has found a whore with time travel ability, and he has a plan, you know. So he has the bag with the dead rats that are present for the Madame's pet Leopold, who she releases from this cage. He's just shed his skin. And this big albino python comes slithering out of his cage. Now, snakes in the books, you know, we always talk about symbolism in the beehive. I'm not going to get into it as much here, but they represent regeneration, cyclical nature of birth, death, rebirth, immortality, and healing. So this is kind of like a good image to have in here. It's frequently a symbol in these books, both literal and metaphorical. We see snakes kind of talked about, like Jamie with his snakes in his hair, and just like that kind of a metaphor, as well as literal snakes talked about. And there's also a little nod here. I personally think that this is, I don't know if you remember, did you read Plague of Zombies? Did you read that story from Lord John?
No.
Well, those of you out here from Lord John, you remember the little yellow snake that like squished his little piece of ham that Lord John was kind of petting and being friends with on the table? I kind of think this is supposed to be a grown-up version of that snake that he befriended, because it looks identical, and she kind of wrote it at the same time, and the snake comes from the Indies. So I think that was Leopold when he was a baby. So that's just my take on it, you guys. See what you guys think. So the Comte makes a special arrangement with Madame Fabian regarding Madeline, which surprises her what he wants. So we don't get told the whole story yet. We're kind of putting it
kind
together.
of can piece some of it together.
Yeah, but he
I'm
wants
gonna
her
want to be back in a couple
exclusively
days.
for a few months,
Yes.
so we can guess what his deal is. And I think, what do you think is the intention here, and why is he interested in her womb, and what does he want to accomplish with having her impregnated? You said that he wants a super baby.
I was thinking super baby, and also I'm trying to figure out with his
Immortality, a way to have immortality, even if he dies, like pieces of him live on.
Yes,
type
like a
of idea.
Weird clone kind of thing. Yeah, I was,
Yes, like a little bit
like,
of, an engineered, like kind
it's
of
like Star Wars, Boba
Yeah.
Fett, for how he created an army of clones of him, and then he had like his son, but it's really a clone of him. For all my Star Wars fans out there, just that's what I was picturing. Not only just this super baby, but like if he could, just kind of almost be reborn.
Yeah. So then she asked the Comte if she's ever told him where her snake is originated from, and he nearly reveals like that he was her customer 15 years ago, because he's kind of thinking she doesn't remember stuff.
Yeah.
But she doesn't pick up on it, and tells him the snake came from the West Indies and is a spirit mystère, or a Loa, which we get a lot of that in both Voyager and in Plague of Zombies. And so, and they're like kind of an intermediary between spirits and man and so forth. And we'll talk more about that in the AfterBuzz as well. This one particularly about whether or not he's a Leopold. You guys think about that, and when we get on there, you guys tell me if you think I'm off the hizzy with that idea. So then we find out a little more about this Aphili powder, which Gala sent. While, Leopold is munching rats that the Comte keeps pulling from his bag.
Poisoned rats.
Poisonous rats, yeah. I'm sure that the lady, Madame Fabian's, probably wouldn't be thrilled about that idea, her precious Leopold being fed poisoned rats.
Indigestion,
Yes, yeah. He might just take a little permanent nap,
Yeah.
So we find out that the powder was waiting for him on his return. And it had come from Melisande at Rose Hall in Jamaica, and the note said, "Try this. It may be what the frog used." Hey, try it. What the hell, right?
Give it a whirl.
So we got our next. I think this is our last clip for the Comte. Let's see. Number 5.
Rakutsi picked up the bag again, weighing the risks. But after all, if news came from the Court of Miracles, his name would soon be known in any case. "I wonder, madame, as you know everyone in Paris." He gave her a small bow, which she graciously returned. "Are you acquainted with a certain man known as Maître Raymond? Some call him the Frog," he added. She blinked, then looked amused. "You're looking for the Frog?" "Yes. Is that funny?" He reached into the sack, fishing for a rat. "Somewhat. I should perhaps not tell you, but since you are so accommodating..." She glanced complacently at the purse he had put beside her tea-bowl. A generous deposit on account. "Maître Grandry is looking for you."
How about that?
He stopped dead, hand clutching her furry body. "What? You've seen him?" She shook her head, and, sniffing distastefully at her cold tea, rang the bell for her maid. "No, but I've heard the same from 2 people. Asking for me by name." Rakutsi's heart beat faster. "Monsieur Count of Saint-Germain? That is you?" she asked with no more than mild interest. False names were common in her business. He nodded, mouth suddenly too dry to speak, and pulled the rat from the sack. It squirmed suddenly in his hand, and a piercing pain in his thumb made him hurl the rodent away. Sacre bleu! It bit me! The rat, dazed by impact, staggered drunkenly across the floor toward Leopold, whose tongue began to flicker faster. Fabienne, though, uttered a sound of disgust and threw a silver-backed hairbrush at the rat.
So right?
Yeah.
I wanted to share that, listen to this idea. Diane says, my guess is he needs embryonic cells after birth to rejuvenate himself. That's an idea.
Oh, wow. That sounds like some weird facial that people are doing nowadays. Oh
Like
my
he's like going to do
gosh.
stem cells or something, I guess, or
Yes.
maybe he thinks it'll come in handy. Um,
Little weird lotion.
Carrie thinks that Leopold was that little yellow snake on the table because Diana wouldn't have
Yay.
mentioned a snake if it didn't mean something. I think so too, because she was writing this at the same time as that book. See, this is why
And as you're seeing
knowing
those
that kind of stuff is
connections.
important. Placenta smoothies, Allison Fisher says. um, so, so we find a few revelations in this section and a questions raised. And remember, we don't do spoilers, so don't give spoilers away. Melisande is gayless and was this, they're the same person, and the supplier of this powder, which is the zombie poison. When and where did the comp connect with her? So we've already talked about that.
Yeah.
That it was when, I told you my thought on that process. The resurrection of the rat proves that the potion worked.
Yes.
But the
Be
thing
dead
is,
for a while.
yeah, but yeah, he went bar hopping. He already waited 12 hours. Then he went bar hopping before he went there. So, I mean, this rat took its
Been a
time, but
while.
it finally came back. Yeah. But the thing is, his experiment's still kind of a no-go because he lost control. He doesn't know which rat this is or anything or how much he gave it. So he lost control of the whole situation. So it's really kind of like a moot point.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that this zombie powder is what Raymond used on the Comte? What do you think?
I want to say no because
Me
I just
neither. I don't
want.
think so either.
Yeah. I feel like he would have used something a bit better than Galus
Yes.
would have used. I just feel
I
like he's
do.
a little classier.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Because that's dangerous crap. You know what I mean? It makes you have brain damage and stuff. And he's not brain damaged.
No.
So I kind of don't think it was that,
No,
but
he's smarter. Yeah.
It would have been nice for Galus to say, if you try it, you're going to wake up brain damage, by the way,
Right?
FYI.
Oh my God, no. But of course not, because that's Galus. So,
Yeah. So do you have any thoughts or outlandish predictions so far about Madeline, what the Comte is planning, or repercussions that may come from it, or whatever?
Oh, I mean,
Because something
I think he
interesting is
wants to
going to happen with this. So
yeah, I think he wants to rent her for a year, and he's saying, I want her for a long time. So I'm seeing it as a year because he knows that she's going to be ovulating in the next few days. And so I don't know what he plans on doing. I don't picture that he can like harvest eggs or anything like that at this time frame. So I'm picturing that he wants to sleep with her and try to make a baby. So that's where I'm going with that. I still don't understand for what purpose or anything. It got
just
me
to
on
create
that.
a super race and see how much, he might be testing to see if it is a genetic thing, just kind of doing it as part of his experimentation. It could be his way of having immortality, another level of immortality, a
Just
piece
hope
of
he
himself.
treats her right. She's just so excited to see him and is
I
like
know.
so happy.
And he's like, she's been a whore long enough to appreciate a little kindnesses. It's
I
like,
hope he puts her up in
damn.
that nice apartment overlooking the river. Like, I just want him to like treat her right, give her like as much bread, and she can't have brie if she's pregnant with his baby, but like give her all the food she wants and just let her be a little princess. I hope he treats her right because I just don't trust him.
Little princess whore. Yes.
Yeah, a prisoner princess.
He were, as we say in the Scots, right? So now we're switching gears into the Michael and Joan story. I'm going back and kind of filtering that story out. So Michael and Joan's storyline, their whole story for what we've covered is taking place on the ship, the English Channel. So the opening line is they did say red hair was a sign of the devil. And now it kind of brings us to remember that Michael is the only one of the Murray kids with the features and hair like Jamie. He's kind of the
Yes.
one that looks like Jamie. And he and Joan are up on deck watching Scotland fade away in the distance. And his hair is whipping, and she says it looks like flames on his head.
Yeah.
And he's returning to Paris to his place where he's managing Jared's business, his wine business. And he's overcome with grief. He just buried his father. His pregnant wife, who he loved immensely, died a month before that of
Yeah.
influenza, and she was pregnant with her child. So basically, he lost his wife and child and his
Yes.
father all in a month, you know.
Yes.
And he's a very well-traveled, out of all the Murrays, he's the most sophisticated of the
Mm-hmm.
kids, you know, the most well-traveled. And he's escorting Joan back to Paris to become a nun at the convent where Mother Hildegard is the leading lady, you know.
Yes. Yes.
So we're going to have her. She's miraculously still alive. Um, these people live like a long time in the Outlander
Yes.
verse, you know, like what's his
Mm-hmm.
name, Ned, who lived
Yes.
forever too.
Ned
Ned
Gowan.
and Mother Hildegard should hook up, I think, you know, with the
They're
little
probably
bouton.
drinking those placenta smoothies. So who knows? Yes.
So she feels a lot of comfort that Michael's with her as a because the thought of like going her own way to France
Oh
scares
yeah.
the hell out of her. She's
She's never left. Mm-hmm.
never been anywhere but like 5 miles from Balrigan in her life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So this whole thing is like a scary prospect. And she has a bare grasp. She thinks she knows French, but she turns out that she has a bare grasp of it when she's actually spoken in its native form, you
Yeah.
know? And she thinks, well, you know, Jenny has been teaching me French. And and so
With
it's
her
just like
dirty
a big
novels.
deal for her. With her dirty novels, teaching the nun, the whirly girl that's going to be a nun. Um,
I loved that. What words do
totally
you
Jenny.
know?
That's totally Jenny, right? What the
Yes.
hell? As long as you
She's at
learn.
home with all those
Just
kids,
so
and
you
she's
know what
just
you're
like,
missing.
Tommy Tom.
Good for you to learn
Michael,
what you're missing with this
yes,
choice.
yes, yes. That was
You
her
sure
like
you want to do
mothering
this?
away. Yeah, you sure you want? Yeah.
So she cried, and it's very much I put it down lower, but I think it goes here. I'm going to mention it here. It's kind of a little bit of a use of paradox with Joan because she's never been out of her village until she embarked for France to join this convent. And so it's a great use of paradox because Joan's world is about to be expanded as she moves toward a life that's going to be more recluse than where she came from. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like she's actually like going out in the world, but only to shut herself away. So
Yes.
it's kind of an
Not
interesting
real.
little paradox there, you know. Anyway, so she cries watching Scotland leave and you know fade away, and her mother's frantically waving to her, and Michael gives her a handkerchief to wipe her tears, and the two of them stand at the rail watching the land fade away, and then he begins to ask her about her plants, and learns that she's never even seen a nun. She has no clue, you know, really what
No.
she's getting into. She doesn't know about different orders. She knows nothing. She knows
No.
nothing, Jon Snow, right?
Love it.
You know
Love it.
nothing.
No,
So one of
exactly.
the first things you notice is that she and Michael seem to find conversation between the two of them easy when they're both
Easy.
internally struggling and they both kind of don't feel good about opening up to people. They both
Mm-hmm.
kind of feel at a comfort with each other, and you kind of see that right away.
Yes.
And even to at one point she gets him laughing, which he probably hasn't laughed forever, you know.
Yes.
So that's where we're going to pick up our next clip, and this one is 6. Here we go.
I'm no nun yet, am I? He looked her up and down in the frank way Heathen men did, and smiled more broadly. Have you ever seen a nun? He asked. I have not, she said, as starchily as she could. I haven't seen God or the Blessed Virgin either, but I believe in them too. Much to her annoyance, he burst out laughing. Seeing the annoyance, though, he stopped at once, though she could see the urge still trembling there behind his assumed gravity. I do beg your pardon, Miss Mackimmie, he said. I wasn't questioning the existence of nuns. I've seen quite a number of the creatures with my own eyes. His lips were twitching, and she glared at him. Creatures, is it? A figure of speech, you know. I swear it. Forgive me, sister. I ken not what I do. He held out a hand, cowering in mock terror. The urge to laugh made her that much more cross, but she contented herself with a simple of disapproval. Curiosity got the better of her, though, and after a few moments spent inspecting the foaming wake of the ship, she asked, not looking at him, "When you saw the nuns, then, what were they doing?" He got control of himself by now, and answered her seriously. "Well, I see the Sisters of Notre Dame, who work among the poor all the time in the streets. They always go out by twos, Ken, and both nuns will be carrying great, huge baskets filled with food, I suppose. Maybe medicines. They're covered, though, the baskets, so I can't say for sure what's in them. Perhaps they're smuggling brandy and lace down to the docks." He nudged aside from her upraised hand, laughing. "Oh, you'll be a rare nun, Sister June. Terror de monum.
That was the title, Terror de Monum.
She pressed her lips tight together, not to laugh. Terror of demons. She couldn't. "Not Sister Joan," she said. "They'll give me a new name, likely, at the convent."
So right away, we see they seem to be comfortable together.
Yeah.
And he asks her if she gets to choose her name, and if so, what would she choose? And she hasn't told anybody, but she shares her idea with him. So it kind of gives you a sense of her feeling a sense of comfort with him, that she really isn't fully admitting to herself, and he as well. So Michael tells, but he shares that it's Sister Gregory, named after the Pope, and says, you don't think that's too presumptuous. So Michael tells her that it's a pleasant change from Mary, which is like every nun is Mary.
Right, exactly.
And so he says, half the nuns he meets are that. So which she's surprised he meets nuns, and he says, well, we provide a lot of the sacrificial wine for the churches. So they come in to buy that. Were you surprised that she seemed to know so very little about nuns or their life? Never even saw a nun, but was ready to give up her whole life for this unknown commitment. What did you think about that?
I mean, I think back to myself when I was younger. Right. And before I wanted to be a music teacher, which is what my degree is in, what I did for all of my life before I had my kids, I wanted to be a paleontologist. I watched Jurassic Park, and I was like, that's what I need to do with my life. That's all I want to do.
Did not know that.
Yes. Oh,
I learned something new.
Hardcore. And I started to do a lot of research, and I was figuring out like where do the paleontologists have to live? And then it was like Montana, and I was like, I don't think I can live in Montana. And you just naturally start to ask people a little bit about it. Now, granted, Joan would never have been like, I want to be a paleontologist and find dinosaurs. It wasn't really a thing then that they were really into. But you think that she would have asked around a little bit. You think that maybe she would have, spoken to someone, who was religious or had bumped into nuns, for her to know so little about it. And then, it's one thing to talk about it, for me to be like, oh, I want to be a paleontologist when I grow up. But it's another thing to leave your entire home, your whole family, say, I'm never going back there. I'm going abroad. I'm giving up that life.
Chastity, giving up sex, giving up everything, a life, a
After
family.
you read all these nice novels where you actually know about sex now. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Auntie Jenny. It's like you're now going to go and do something just because you think it's going to shut something down. You think that it's going to be something that helps you. So I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. Go be an Alaskan king crab fisherman. Okay, those people never get to see their families. They're so busy. Yeah,
there's other ways to be a recluse, and like shut yourself from people. Yeah.
But it's just, you can just tell it's just what she's been told. So I found it quite interesting, because I feel like, you don't have to be a nun in France, right? Don't they have like nuns everywhere?
No, but the thing is, you have to remember too, she grew up in post-colonic. So a lot of the Catholicism was probably wiped out. Being able to there wasn't probably convents or a lot of things like that there for her to see it. But I do think that for her to make this choice, I'm glad they have like a little training program type of thing before you actually have to give your vows. like the little
Yes.
novice. I'm not Catholic, but you know what I mean? Like
I
the
just know
novice
it from Sound of
postulants.
Music. Yeah,
Yes,
you're not like a real nun,
exactly.
you know, and
She
she's
can go
dancing on a
she can
hill.
go fall in love still with her,
Yes,
what was
with
his
the
name?
captain.
The captain. Yeah, she
Yes.
can find her captain and change her mind last minute.
Wasn't
Um,
she Sister Mary too? No, she was Maria. She was Maria. But I forget what her sister name was. But exactly, yeah. There's a trial period
the
where you
Bond
have to go
Trap.
and you're not a full nun.
Yes, there's a trial period. So,
Yeah.
like, at least she gets that and like see if this is really for me. But she seems like, oh no, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
She's a very determined young lady. As
Yes,
far
she
as like,
is.
she has a lot of courage too. I think Joan does. Anyway, so we soon find out that she told everyone she felt called to this. We knew that from Echo. That she told
Mm-hmm.
everybody she felt called to this. But we
Yeah.
find out that it's for very unique reasons that she's doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a huge step. He goes back to the different orders of nuns and mentions that there's contemplative nuns that spend all their time in prayer and contemplating. And he asks her if this is the kind of nun she would be. And she says she's had enough contemplation on the
Yes.
moors in Scotland as she doesn't like it. So it's kind of like an early hint to her issues because we haven't heard
Mm-hmm.
about her issues yet.
Yeah.
And so this remark reminds Michael to think of Jamie living in the cave. And so we get
Mm-hmm.
this echo back to this time in a different perspective, in Michael's perspective, which is
Yes.
interesting. You know what I mean? It's
Yes.
like a
As a
new
boy.
flavor on that. Yes. And so I'm going to play this clip. This is our clip 7. I have 9, so I don't have much more on that. But let's see.
I was thinking it's fun thinking about another redhead, seeing Jamie in that way.
Yes. Okay. 7.
Back in the moors. The wind gets into your head after a bit. He hesitated for a moment. When my Uncle Jamie, your da, you ken he hid in a cave after Culloden. For 7 years, she said, a little impatient. Aye, everyone kens that story. Why? He shrugged. Only thinking. I was no but a wee bairn at the time, but I went now and then with my mam to take him food there. He'd be glad to see us, but he wouldn't have talked much. It scared me to see his eyes. Joan felt a small shiver pass down her back. Nothing to do with the stiff breeze. She suddenly saw, in her head, a thin,
There's a hint.
dirty man, the bones starting in his face, crouched in the dank, frozen shadows of the cave. Da! She scoffed, to hide the shiver that crawled up her arms. How could anyone be scared of him? He's a dear, kind man. Michael's wide mouth twitched at the corners. I suppose it would depend whether you'd ever seen him in a fight, but... Have you? She interrupted, curious. Seen him in a fight? Have I? But, he said, not willing to be distracted, I didn't mean he scared me. It was that I thought he was haunted by the voices in the wind. That dried up the spit in her mouth, and she worked her tongue a little, hoping it didn't show. She needn't have worried. He wasn't looking at her. My own da said it was because Jamie spent so much time alone that the voices got into his head and he couldn't stop hearing them. When he'd feel safe enough to come to the house, it would take hours sometimes before he could start to hear us again. Mam wouldn't have let us talk to him until he'd had something to eat and was warmed through. He smiled, a little ruefully. She said he wasn't a human till then. And looking back, I didn't think she meant that as a figure of speech. Well, she said, but stopped, not knowing how to go on. She wished fervently that she'd known this earlier. Her da and his sister were coming on to France later. She might not see him. She could maybe have talked to da, asked him just what the voices in his head were like, what they said, whether they were anything like the ones she heard.
All right. So
Right?
here is our first mention of Joan hearing voices. And we start to get some insight into the things that Joan is hiding. she's been kind of keeping held up in herself. These things are tormenting her. By the way, Donna has told us that it's called a novitiate, the training
Oh,
period for nuns. So
thank you, Donna.
thank you, Donna. So these things are tormenting her. You know, it's a gift that she has had to keep inside with no one to talk to. So no wonder, you know, she's like a little bit
Yeah.
tortured, you know. So, Mary, what was your first take on these two characters?
Well, first off, I mean, you know, of course, knowing, you know, that Joan's going to go off and wants to be a nun and all the things that she did with Leary and trying to help tie up the loose ends, you know, and everything. But as I said, since the show, I've just been picturing like wee little Joan, you know,
Right.
in my mind. And so to be reading about the difficulties that she's having with when she is alone, she's hearing voices, that she
Seeing vision.
wishes that she wishes now that she has like this inkling, like, ooh, you know, maybe Da has something like what I have going on. And granted, you know, really that was just more a figure of speech. And yes,
Right.
people, you know, being
But she
alone kind
doesn't
of,
know. She was like, I
no,
could have had somebody to talk
exactly,
to. I could have had someone to
exactly.
talk to, you know, that would have understood me,
Yes,
you know?
yes, she's like clinging to that hope, like,
Yes,
oh,
it's so
Jamie
sad.
knows. It happens to
Yes,
other people, you know, because this is something she's never been able to be open with or share about. And like, and then, like you said, you know, she's able to see this person in the corner with the gray shroud. So it's just, you feel so bad. And as I said, having this visual image now because of the show with little wee Joan, I'm like, oh, I just want to give her a big hug. Like, you poor
yes,
thing, you've been tormented.
right.
And now you're understanding why she wanted to get the heck out of Dodge.
Exactly. You know, she wants to try to not expose herself to these because she doesn't know what to do when she gets them.
Yes.
Um, so my thought, how about Michael? What was your like initial take on Michael's
I
character?
love him.
I
I
did too.
love him. Yes. You know,
He's like
obviously
a
he's,
sophisticated version he's kind of like the best of both worlds, you know, the both
yes.
sides of his family, you know.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but he definitely has like a little bit of echoes of Jamie, you know, mixed in there for sure.
It's that red hair.
I
Yeah.
said for my characterizations, I said Michael, I see him as caring, charming. He has a very teasy sense of humor, which I loved.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw him a little bit in Echo. He was like kind of had this little bantery thing with Ian in Echo.
Yeah.
And we see him also very protective and honorable, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
thought, and Joan, I said naive and afraid, but she's also has courage. While she's afraid of something, she has a lot of courage as well. She's gifted, and also confused, but shows courage. So
Yeah.
those are my things I thought on that. Now I wanted to talk a minute on perspective because, and I talked about this a smidge before, but I find it very enlightening to see Jamie and Claire um, and previous scenes that we've already seen, like this situation with
Yeah.
the Dunbonnet, through a different character's viewpoint. I always love when, you know, we see this with Diana. Diana's very good at it. And throughout this story, you'll see, we already saw it with the comp, remembering
Mm-hmm.
the Star Chamber and what happened with Claire, what you
Claire.
saw in her face and how she was kind of horrified and all that,
Mm-hmm.
and the blue light. And so now we're seeing this with Jamie, and you'll kind of see a few smidgets of this that kind of add rounding out of the characters and the relationships and different things that gives you a new perspective on the characters you love. And
Yes.
so you know, you'll see that. You also see it when we get to Mother Hildegard and Jared. They'll all kind of comment. It kind of keeps that us into what the whole main saga is about. But
Mm-hmm.
here's where we get, and I do this with my Beehive people. We talk about this. The people that kind of don't want to hear anything story that's not Jamie and Claire. Those
Yeah.
people, you know, that skip, you know, the Bree and Roger stuff and skip
Yeah.
everything that's not Jamie, Claire, Lord John. They skip, and
They're missing out.
they're missing out. Yes, we
They're
already
missing
like
out.
we always like, you know, kind of
Yeah.
bash that. But the thing is, here's another reason they're missing out. Because all of these other characters orbit around Jamie and Claire. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Everything that we meet is kind of somehow connected to them.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that only want to see Jamie and Claire stuff are missing the point that in broadening the perspectives, if it's done well, which Diana does that well, it gives you
Yes.
fresh nuance on the character that you already love. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so if you really love that character, it kind of gives you like another thing to kind of see with the character you love. But if you skip it, you don't see that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
kind of
just
like,
like, yeah.
it's kind of like if you're watching a show on standard definition and then you get high definition, you know what I mean? It kind of
Mm-hmm.
adds more layers of information to give you a better picture. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like
Yeah.
that with the characters when you get other people's perspectives of a character, you know? And
Exactly.
then
I
you
mean,
like look at it back without having that, you know, like you watch something in high def, then you go and watch it on standard. You might have looked fine before, but once you saw it in
mm-hmm.
high def, you're like, God, how do I don't even want to see this now. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's the same way with these books. So it's very
Mm-hmm.
important, you know, to kind of get all the perspectives.
No, I
So the wind's
agree.
lifting up, and Joan and Michael go below, and Michael starts to talk to the couple next to them in French. And Joan is starting to freak out because she realizes how little
She
French
knows
she
nothing.
actually knows.
Yes.
I know nothing, right? And
Yes.
so she thought she had learned French, but she doesn't understand a word. And it's kind of a little bit of a parallel to her whole experience. You know, she's doing all this because she thinks she's doing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, she thinks she has it all figured out,
Yes.
but she doesn't, you know what I mean? And she's kind
Correct.
of not doing necessarily what she should be doing.
Yeah.
And so determined, she's trying to listen very carefully as he talks to this couple to learn the words. So while she's struggling to understand the conversation, a movement causes her to notice a man on the bench opposite, and he appears to be wearing this gray shroud.
Mm-hmm.
And Joan knows immediately what this means. It's a portent of death.
Yeah.
And it's similar to a vision that she'd seen twice before of an old man who died of an illness and a young child who died of an accident.
Mm-hmm.
And so Joni had been distraught when the child died because she felt like she had said something. See, that's the
She could have
thing, you know,
stopped it.
like
Yeah.
you feel like, do I say something?
Mm-hmm.
Can I, you know, and then you feel the guilt, the survivor guilt of that you didn't stop this when you knew something, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
like her feeling, I think that's another part of the nun thing is her feeling penance, you
Mm-hmm.
know, feeling like she owes
Mm-hmm.
some kind of penance for
For
all the
not
things that
stopping
she
it.
could, yes,
Mm-hmm.
for just in general, all these people that she could warn. Um, so she leaps up from the bench and her stomach is clenched and she climbs up the deck in a desperate attempt to get away from the situation. And she's thinking, I put a quote here, not again, she thought in agony. Why show me such things? What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
She pawed frantically at the ladder, climbing as fast as she could, gasping for air, needing to be away from the dying man. How long might it be, dear Lord, until she reached the convent and safety? So that
Yes.
quote really gives you in a nutshell, like, her whole motivation here. You know what I mean?
Yes. And the
So,
franticness which she has to try to
yes,
get there, thinking that this will save her.
yes, this will save her. And so as she goes up, a gust of wind causes her skirts to blow up and billow, exposing her legs and her
Yes.
booty to Michael and those left
And
below.
the
And they
couple. Yes.
causes great commentary, like she's got a hell of an ass for a nun and all
Yep.
this other stuff,
Yep.
right? So why do you think Joan is really joining the combat? What is she hoping that it does for her? You know,
I think
because she's
she's
not going to just lose her
frightened.
vision. Does she think she'll get cured? Do you think she just thinks they'll be able to help her? She could confess to them what's going. Like, what do you think she is thinking that's going to be her ticket to help her? Like, how is it going to help her? What do you think?
Yeah, I think with this quote about like, why show me this? I think she's really wondering and thinking like, God gave me this ability, and maybe if I get to know God better and I can be around people who get to have really deep conversations, maybe they'll have learned of somebody else who had this. Maybe it's something bad that, you know, I'm going to get in trouble for. So maybe if I'm able to go and just like do as much praying and helping as possible, that will help me get out of this way. But
Right.
really, it to me is just like a last ditch effort. You know, I'm so embarrassed and so scared of this that I haven't been able to tell anybody aside
People
from
think
God.
I'm nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like really, she's probably only said it in her prayers, you know, asking for help and asking for forgiveness. So if she can be more with the person, AKA God, that she's been able to, you know, share this with and feels like knows that about her, then
Right.
hopefully she'll be able to at least feel more at peace with it.
And there's something else we always talk about in the Beehive is the Mac Mojo. Matter of fact, it's like one of the things we want to get Blake to do a shirt, but we call it the Mac Mojo because like she is a Mackenzie, even though she's a McKinney,
Yes.
her mother's a Mackenzie, and
Okay.
so we theorize that the Mackenzies are the ones that have a lot of these psych gifts. You know, Jamie,
Yes.
dream. It comes out in different ways for each, you know what I mean? But it's
Mm-hmm.
that side of the family, Roger a little bit, we've kind of picked up a lot of that actually in Echo. You see it undertoned. And so a lot of this Mackenzie line kind of carries some of those elements in different ways. And so maybe
Mm-hmm.
she got some of that mojo from her Mac side, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's my theory on it anyway. So I think I put for my answer on that. I think she's running away to the convent because her gifts
Mm-hmm.
scare her, and she's
Mm-hmm.
looking for answers. And she's running away because of her vision, she's hoping that being in a holy setting might cure her,
Yeah.
or she won't see people in danger and be faced with it every day to have
Yes.
to make these choices. Maybe she could talk to someone there. Maybe she could talk to a priest, where
Mm-hmm.
her confession is
Will be
protected.
secret. Yes.
Yes. And also she kind of relates with Joan of Arc. Like she thinks
Mm-hmm.
about her name as something inherent in the name, and her visions were accepted in France by the
Yes.
French. So she might feel like maybe they're more
It's a thing that's
amenable to
allowed. Yeah.
understand. And maybe in the convent she can feel closer to God since she'll be surrounded by
Mm-hmm.
prayer, and her focus will be to do chores and prayers and be far from these visions, so they won't
Yeah.
happen there. And she'll be kind of protected by the other sisters,
Mm-hmm.
shielded with them. So, first Joan hears these voices, and now she hears premonitions. She gets premonitions, and, so no wonder she's on the run, right? And between difficulties understanding French, even though she thinks she knew the language and the visions, she's really having a rough time already. She's not even in France yet, she's already
No,
having a
poor
rough time.
thing.
And I agree she's afraid to mention the voices she hears for fear of being considered a witch or,
Mm-hmm.
like a
Especially coming
mad
from
woman.
Scotland, like that was, yeah.
Yeah, and so she's not sure if how the nuns would react if they knew. She hopes they
Mm-hmm.
won't treat her like the people in Cranesmere treated Claire.
Yes.
And so, you have no idea whether she'll be able to change anything, such as preventing an accident that killed the child, if she told people about her vision. She doesn't know what would have been the outcome. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very frightening for her to have these visions. At any age, it would be frightening to have visions,
Yes.
but she's very young and she doesn't
She's young.
understand how all of this, what to do with this,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not something people talk about. It's not like they
No.
have a vision club, you know what I
No.
mean, where they sit
She's on
around,
a
her and the
Facebook
other
group.
seers and chit chat,
Yes.
And so it's like a Cassandra thing. She doesn't want to be like a Cassandra thing.
Mm-hmm.
So she's in a catch-22. What do you think would have happened to Joan if she would have said something about the child? Do you think, like, what might have happened, do you think, had she?
Oh. Yeah, it would have been
Do you
so
think they
hard
would
because
have accepted it? Because it is Scotland, like they believe in things, sight and stuff. You think she would have been automatically like ostracized, or they
I
would have
think
thought
that
she's nuts?
I think it still would have happened because it was such a weird thing of the ox, just
Yeah.
getting, spooked by the hornet, that it's not like she was able to say he is going to, die because of XYZ. Please keep him indoors tomorrow. It's not like she's able to have parameters.
I don't
It's
even think
just
she
this
saw
is going to
exactly what was
happen.
going to happen, just that he was in
Yes,
danger. What are you going to do? Put the kid in a
exactly.
bubble? Make him the bubble boy?
Exactly. So she can't
You
do
know what I
that.
mean?
So, and I think that that's the problem too. It's like she doesn't know when it's going to happen. So she's looking at this man down below in the boat. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen. What am I going to say to
Right,
him?
right,
She doesn't know if he's sick. She doesn't know anything until
right,
it happens.
right. So, do you think the visions will go away when she reaches the convent, or will the nuns try to make use of them? Where do you see this going in the story?
I see her being really ashamed and scared by it.
Uh-huh.
I see her possibly on her journey to the convent. France was such kind of a magical place at this time and age with everything going on, that maybe something else catches her eye. There were all the gypsies and everything going around then. So maybe she's able to see that some really wacky things are a bit more either accepted or kind of a little bit more in the norm in France and in Paris in particular than it was
Right.
necessarily in Scotland. But I don't see her opening up anytime soon to anybody about this because she isn't proud of it.
Right. Okay. So her round acidness, causes
Mm-hmm.
these hilarious comments as she leaves the cabin and goes to the deck. And her fellow travelers argue about her loss and becoming a bride of Christ's regard to her sex life. And what a
Yes.
shame, right? And I love the
Yes.
banter between the man and the wife on the boat, like
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely banter of this long married couple vibe, and it's
Yes.
totally like Tom. I could see Tom and I having this conversation. And so Diane is very good at showing the organics of different
Mm-hmm.
types of marriages,
Yeah.
like each couple has their own um, chemistry and love language
Mm-hmm.
and vibe, you know what I mean? And she kind of really differentiates this couple from this couple. Like all the couples aren't like the same thing, you know what I mean? Which
Exactly.
is very
Yes.
great about Diana. Um, and so the wife makes this comment about farting, and Michael quits the cabin in a hurry, and he climbs up to the deck and
Mm-hmm.
in like overcome with grief
Yes.
for his dead wife, Lily, recalling this funny episode of her farting in bed.
Mm-hmm.
And although he has tried to be cheerful and put on a good face for the last few weeks, like this is
He's
what
just
happens.
so
Like it's
grief.
called stealth grief, where it just kind of sneaks up on you with this, like a small comment.
Yeah.
Um, can just spark grief, and it just totally overwhelms him. And it's
Mm-hmm.
actually like a real thing, stealth grief.
Yeah.
And there's the littlest things, the oddest little things can set it off. And this is what happened to him. So he remembers this with tears and laughter. He remembers the story. And I love this. I love this moment, and I love the memory that he has with Ian, because we know where Ian is as
Yeah.
well in Echo. So you kind of
Mm-hmm.
merge that in with that story. So I'm going to play this a little here. Um, Clip 8. How are we doing on time? We doing good? Are we okay? Are you okay? It's you, it's not me.
In spite of the tears that poured down his face, remembering Lily. She'd eaten eels in garlic sauce for dinner. Those always made her fart with a silent deadliness like poison swamp gas. As the ghastly miasma had risen up round him, he'd sat bolt upright in bed, only to find her staring at him, a look of indignant horror on her face.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
How dare
Right.
she said, in a voice of offended majesty. Really, Michelle? You knew it wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
Her mouth had dropped open, outrage added to horror and distaste. Oh, she gasped, gathering her pug dog to her bosom. You not only fart like a rotting whale, you attempt to blame it on my poor puppy. Cochon! Whereupon she had begun to shake the bed sheets delicately, using her free hand to waft the noxious odors in his direction,
Oh my
addressing
gosh.
censorious remarks to Pompon, who gave Michael a sanctimonious look before turning to lick his mistress's face with great enthusiasm. Oh, Jesus, he whispered, and sinking down, pressed his face against the rail. Oh, God, lass, I love you.
Oh,
He shook silently, head buried in his arms, aware of sailors passing now and then behind him, but none of them took notice of him in the dark. At last the agony eased a little, and he drew breath. All right, then. He'd be all right now, for a time. And he thanked God belatedly that he had Joan, or Sister Gregory, if she liked, to look after for a bit. He didn't know how he'd managed to walk through the streets of Paris to his house alone. Go in, greet the servants. Would Jared be there? Face the sorrow of the household, accept their sympathy for his father's death, order a meal, sit down, and all the time wanting just to throw himself on the floor of their empty bedroom and howl like a lost soul.
oh,
He'd have to face it, sooner or later, but not just yet. And right now he'd take the grace of any respite that was offered. He blew his nose with resolution, tucked away his mangled handkerchief, and went downstairs to fetch the basket his mother had sent. He couldn't swallow a thing himself, but feeding Joan would maybe keep his mind off things for that 1 minute more.
oh,
That's how you do it, his brother Ian had told him as they leant together on the rail of their mother's sheep pen, the winter's wind cold on their faces, waiting for their Da to find his way through dying. You find a way to live for that 1 more minute, and another, and another. Ian had lost a wife too, and knew. He'd wiped his face. He could weep before Ian, while he couldn't with his elder brother or the girls, certainly not in front of his mother, and asked, "And he gets better after a time? Is that what you're telling me?" His brother had looked at him straight on, the quiet in his eyes showing through the outlandish mohawk tattoos. "No," he said softly, "but after a time you find you're in a different place than you were, a different person than you were. Then you look about and see what's there with you. You'll maybe find a use for yourself. That helps." "Aye, fine," he said under his breath, and squared his shoulders. "We'll see then."
So that's kind of like the idea for Michael, for the space between. You know what I mean? He's in that space between of his utter grief and trying to find his way out of that and get some closure. And he's in that space between in his life. Joan is in the space between of her old life and this new life and trying to figure out how she's going to get out of it and do move in that space. And for the Comte, what do you think it will be for the Comte?
Oh, this new baby life thing. I don't even know.
For the Comte, he wants to find out how to control the time in between when you travel on the stones.
Yeah.
That space between this time and that time, what happens in that space, and to control that space somehow and find out the secrets of it. So that's kind of what his focus is on the space between. So that's kind of the three. Having to look after Jones, helping him because he doesn't know how he's going to cope when he returns to his house. It kind of gives him another focus. And you know how they say when you have a bad thing going on, it's like the best thing you could do is help others.
Yes.
And it helps to take your focus off of your own thing. And that's kind of what we see Michael doing here. And so he can't, like, the idea of having to go back to his house without his wife being there is like terrorizing to him. You know what I mean? Which you can imagine, because he left right after he could to go to his father, and he hasn't been back there now, and it's going to feel emptiness, you know? And so he's not, you know, he's trying to like hold that off at bay. So there's such a range of emotion in this scene. We see lust from the guys looking at her going up this thing, humor, this tearing grief, and then this beautiful scene with Ian of this brotherly love, this flashback and support. And Michael's just lost so much in such a short time. It's very heartbreaking, you know? And did you like that scene, that flashback scene with Ian?
Oh my
Wasn't that
gosh,
beautiful?
so sweet. I mean, if you didn't already love Ian enough, and then he just goes on and is able to do that and have, you know, this wiseness, even though he's younger than Michael, for him to still be able to, you know, be able to share in the grief and to be able to say, you know, find some things, find a way to make use of yourself, basically, you know, it's not going to go away.
Like eventually you'll look up and you'll see what's around you and figure out what you can do, you know, eventually. Because he'd been through it. Remember, he was just a miserable little puppy, you know. And, you know, you get the impression that because he was closest in age to Ian, you know, he was the twins with Janet. They were the next kids up. You get the impression they were close, you know, while he was still living there, you know what I mean, growing up. So you kind of get that impression. Yeah, so long ago. When he was just this little tyke getting in trouble all the time. So Ian is just so sweet he has this rescuer personality, you know what I mean? And he's just so loyal and faithful all the time. And he's the one that wants to be there to help, whether it means becoming a Mohawk, making an honest woman out of his cousin, or consoling a cousin. You know, I just love him. And he's always was there for his brother. You can see. So the next morning they see France. It's in the horizon. And despite her exhaustion, she's excited. And she had to spend a sleepless night worrying about the man with the shadow on his face, and wondered if she could do more for him than just pray, because she was praying all night. And so she wonders why she has this gift, and why are the voices not telling her what to do, you know, and just showing her this, you know. And so she gets frustrated. She curses, bites her tongue as a penance for cursing. And Michael gives her wine to try to soothe it. And he asked Joan to pray for him in the repose of his wife's soul. And she chides herself that, God, how could I be so self-absorbed that I didn't realize this? And so she puts her hand on his, and which is this really touching moment. And she says she'll say a prayer at every mass, and we get this scene, which was my great this scene.
Yes.
And there's such a touching moment of vulnerability in this last scene as these two strangers are able to comfort each other in this moment. And so this is our last clip. And get this up. Come on, play. Come on. I need to do this while I'm still talking, so that it so that it does
It
it
starts
where,
to play.
yeah, it starts to play. I don't want to cut you off. That's why I don't do that. But
Oh yeah, no
when
worries.
it's just me by myself, I just I
It's a
can cut
different
myself
thing.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Come on. My Audible is frozen.
It's okay.
So
Where is it
anyway,
starting from?
it's starting from I don't really know. I just had the clip.
Yeah.
You know what? Come on. It's like it's locked up.
It's okay.
Okay, well,
We know about it. Yeah.
we know what happens. Watch it just start playing as I'm talking now.
I know. It's okay.
So anyway, they talk, and she agrees to pray for him, pray for his wife's soul, and he agrees to get letters, do letters for
Yes.
her, and be there to basically, if she wants to send a letter more than what the convent
Yeah.
allows, he'll kind of to help her and get letters for
Which,
her.
how
He'll do
sad that
whatever
they
she
would
needs.
like limit it. How
Yeah,
sad that
I
that
think
like
you're
wouldn't
like
be something
allowed one
she
a
could
year
do.
or something like
Oh
that.
my gosh. Yeah.
It's like you're really, put yourself through it.
No thanks.
And they're talking, and I can't even remember now what happened because I didn't write it down. But um, she's like so touched and thankful that he's going to do
Yes.
these letters for her. And he feels like this little bit of joy that he can give her this service. So they're each kind of giving each other a service here, and they have this mutual feeling like somebody is like helping me in this, like through
Yes.
this challenge, that I'm trying to adjust to my own personal little demon that we're trying to do. And as they're just feeling this joyous moment, okay, they hear
Guy
a
jumps off.
scream. She notices first. She notices that he's near the rail,
Yeah.
and looking out, she sees that the shroud is darker than it was,
Yeah.
before, and the bright light, of the day. And so she thinks, yeah, I should go. Should I go and talk to him? But then, as she's thinking, she gets distracted talking to Michael,
Michael.
and then all of a sudden, just as they're happy, and this like bright thing happens
Yes.
between them, you hear this scream, and they look over, and he jumps over the edge of the thing and
Yeah.
commits suicide.
Yeah.
And it's just like, boom, you end there.
Yeah.
And you just so feel bad for Joan right there, because she's going to beat herself up over
Of course.
this,
Of course. Yeah.
because like she's going to say, my God, he probably just needed somebody to talk to, because she felt a pull. Like she felt something like, should I go talk to him? I should probably go talk to him, but she didn't know
Yeah,
what
she
to
was having
say.
a moment of her
She
own
was having a
light and
moment like
stuff.
of being
Yes.
kerflumped over it. And so what do you think she should have done? Should she have gone over and tried to speak to him, or should she have been afraid? Like, when she gets these
I
things, should
wouldn't
she
have.
intervene?
I would not. I'm totally freaked out by it. Have your little happy moment with Michael. Have somebody else
Yes, have your
explain it to
happy moment.
you.
It does get kind of crushed though when somebody commits suicide off the ship.
Yeah. I wish she just. Oh man. Maybe when she's in Paris, she can get books about it or something. I have no idea, but I
and
think
we
she.
get
I think she would have felt worse if. Who knows? I think she's gonna feel bad no matter what. Had she talked to the guy and he still committed suicide, she'd feel like, oh, I didn't do enough, or maybe I shouldn't have spoken to him, and maybe it made it worse. I feel like she's just gonna feel bad no matter what.
yeah, and we get the actual title reference for Michael in this scene. He
Mm-hmm.
says, I actually wrote this quote, thank God I wrote it. Michael said, I lost her between one heartbeat and the next, and I keep looking for her there in that space between.
Yes.
So it's just so lovely, you know. And so for
Yes.
Michael, the space between is the grief and loss of his wife, looking between
Mm-hmm.
this world and the next, and for some closure.
Yeah.
We already talked about what it is for the comp and Joan. Which
Mm-hmm.
storyline, Joan's, Michael's, or the comps, do you find most intriguing at this point?
The comps.
The comps, okay. And do
Yes.
you have any outlandish predictions or wags at this point of what's going to come in any of
Oh,
these
I
storylines?
think the comp's gonna find Joan, and he's just gonna be like, "I see your aura, and I'm gonna teach you the world."
And I want some of that.
Yeah, yeah. I see
I
you
want some of
ripening
that
up.
stuff one day. I want to make babies with you.
Yeah, you read those French novels. Let's do this.
I could show
Yes.
you things, girlfriend.
Yes.
Um, so we're going to close now. And I hope that it's our first duet. I hope you guys enjoyed. I am going to go out with playing a little bit of the works of the Comte.
Yay.
You hear this beginning? Didn't this sound like part of what you heard in France, in the
Yes.
France episode of
Yes.
Outlander? That
So
part,
cool.
it sounds like when they were going through doing the different,
Bear McCreary
the,
probably listens to this as part
yeah,
of
he
his
listed
research.
parts
Yeah.
of it. So anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed our first live that we're doing here as our duet. We're kind of working out the
Thanks
kinks.
yeah.
You know, so bear with us as we're kind of getting our routine here. I will be going on in about 5 minutes to do a little after buzz where I can address some of the more with what you guys are saying. And I will go back through this live and look through your comments and react and respond to some. I know I didn't do as much as I normally do because
You're juggling
that's
a
why
lot.
we take 3 and 4 hours to do these
Yes.
things, because I respond to everybody. But well, I have some more Diana Dietz and symbolism ideas and things for you as well. Remember, our next Moby piece is on chapters 2 through 6, and that's going to be on Saturday at 3. Be sure to join us here next week at 8 on Wednesday as we cover the next section. I'm going to probably shorten that up from what I had listed. I had it from 91 to 112, but it will probably take a section off of that. And make sure that your signed up is going, because I'll probably be posting the addendum. And that addendum, you don't want to miss seeing it. I would save it when I post it so that you have it, you know, you can print it or whatever you want to do with it and have it there by your side as you're reading. So that's it. And I hope you had a good time, Mary.
Yes, thank you
I hope
all
you're
so much,
enjoying
everybody,
it.
for tuning in. This was a
Thank you.
delightful pleasure.
Yeah, we had a lot of people here today, so I'm really excited.
Yay, wonderful.
All
Awesome.
right,
Well, everybody have a
Mary.
great night. Thank you,
And
Angela, and I'll see you
this will
soon.
be up when? Tomorrow, you said? You think? On YouTube?
On YouTube. I was like, this is here now. This will be up. Yeah, we should have it up on YouTube sometime soon, because it takes a little while to rip and then get on up.
Okay,
All right,
great.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.